one of the advantages or disadvantages of coming late down in the panel is that a lot that needed to be said has been said, and I don't want to repeat those things. But for me, when I look at the range of, since we are talking about a book that's being released today, when I look at the range of topics, but beyond the range, the kind of concerns articulated on each topic by Comrade Raja, you wonder and you imagine what kind of a country might India have been if there were even 10 or 15 such parliamentarians present in the Rajya Sabha or Lok Sabha every year, or for each session or each lifetime of the House. Brinda mentioned that it might be hard to fill the pages of a book if you look at the speeches of some other parliamentarians, and it may be impolitic to name anybody, but there's a famous member of Rajya Sabha who entered the House saying that he would serve as a bridge between the judiciary and Parliament, and we did a counting of the number of interventions and speeches, and we said, chalo, let us include questions, Parliament questions asked, and what we got at the end of our exercise, after I think the gentleman has spent a year and a half, is a blank sheet of paper. And something tells me that the next 5 years is not going to see too much of addition to that paper either. So you have MPs and you have MPs. You have people who have greatness thrust upon them. They get given an opportunity to represent, to be the voice of the people of India, to deliberate on laws, to deliberate on policies, to ask questions of the government, questions that people otherwise don't have the opportunity to ask, but who squander that opportunity because for them the purpose of going to Parliament, the purpose of being in an august house like the Rajya Sabha is really not to discharge any obligation towards the people. And then you look at the record of Comrade D. Raja, who comes to Parliament with a lifetime of struggle in defense of the rights of the people. And for him, Parliament is nothing but an extension of that struggle, as it should be. And the issues and topics he raises, the depth and gravity and concern with which he raises those, the perspectives he brings to bear, the research that goes into what he says, tells you what a model parliamentarian he was for the 12 years that he was in the Rajya Sabha, and how prescient many of his observations are. When future generations, or even people 10, 15 years down the road, look back and say India went through a dark period, when every right that the people of India cherish, whether they are women, workers, Dalits, Muslims, journalists, every right that we cherish was being threatened. What did our parliamentarians say? What did our parliamentarians do? And Comrade Raja and his comrades in arms in the CPI, everybody in the left movement, everybody in the democratic movement can hold this kind of book high and say, here is an example of what a parliamentarian did, here is an example of what a communist did. In warning, I was struck, there's a speech given, I think shortly after Mehbooba Mufti's government is dismissed, where Comrade Raja urges the government that please do not go down the path of President's rule. Neither he nor any of us could have imagined the cavalier and brutal way in which 70 years of statecraft get overturned without any thought paid to the rights of people. I'm referring to the reading down of Article 370. That was not even something that anybody could imagine. He was talking about imposition of President's rule. But we can see, based on what happened in August 2019, how the imposition of President's rule, which Comrade Raja warned against, because he saw it as an attack on democratic processes, how this imposition then served as a springboard to perpetuate a legal and constitutional fraud by citing the consent of the central government's representative as a substitute, by holding that person as a substitute for the will of an elected assembly, and using that opinion of the central government's representative as a rubber stamp to not just get rid of Article 370, but to actually abolish the statehood of Jammu and Kashmir. And I applaud, of course, many people criticize these kinds of moves, but among the regional parties, perhaps Mr. Tiruchi Shiva's party, DMK, had the foresight to recognize that what has been done is not a problem just for the people of Jammu and Kashmir. This is an attack on the very federal nature of India's polity. And if it is allowed to pass, tomorrow there will be other victims. Other speeches that Comrade Raja has included in this volume, of course, very moving and very important intervention for his resolution on the abolition of capital punishment, but also a number of heartfelt, powerful speeches on the oppression of Dalits in India and what needs to be done, on the role of the judiciary, women, environment, important interventions on foreign policy. You can see the range of interests and the depth of knowledge that Comrade brings to bear in his interventions. And one just hopes that he gets another opportunity to come back, others like him in his party or in other parties who have the same devotion to the cause of people, get a chance to become members of Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, because it is through the use of institutions like Parliament. See, Parliament, unfortunately, in the eyes of the media, in the eyes of many people, and certainly in the eyes of the government, is reduced to that of simply being a formal institution. So there is a formal aspect to the functioning of Parliament. But even those formal aspects today are not being taken seriously by the government. You have to look at the failure to refer legislation to standing committees, the rush. There's a speech here, perhaps many of you may not get to it, but where Comrade Raja is addressing the question of whether you need legislative councils in states, and he questions the haste with which the then UPA government was rushing through a law to introduce legislative council in Tamil Nadu. But this haste has become a norm now. Every law is rushed through. There is no discussion. There is no attempt to refer laws that require careful analysis to a standing committee. And no less a person than the Chief Justice of India commented on this the other day when he said that it is the failure of Parliament to engage in due deliberation on the passage of laws, which leads to an excess of litigation, which leads to badly drafted laws, which leads to ambiguity. Of course, you have many laws that are badly drafted on purpose. Ambiguities are introduced on purpose so that people of different walks of, so that these laws can be used to harass, to intimidate. to weaponize the already formidable arsenal that the state has in its hands further against different sections of people fighting for the right. So that is, a lot of this is very consciously done, but it's only when you have voices like Comrade Raja in Parliament that you can hope for any kind of rational debate. And I would like to once again applaud Comrade Raja for the example that he has set for everybody who is in Parliament or aspires to be in Parliament. I would like to congratulate the publishers for bringing out this volume in both English and Hindi, and I would hope that it reaches the widest number of people, because it's not just providing a glimpse into the life and work of Comrade Raja, but is a very, very important contribution to our understanding of what it is for India to be a democracy. Thank you very much.